Welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, a podcast where Josh and Sean, two exes, have a frank, open and unscripted conversation about what's going on in their lives. This episode is a Halloween special, and the hosts share some ghoulish memories of growing up in their respective countries. They also discuss their favourite scary movies and revisit some other spooky experiences. Enjoy the ride. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. My name is Josh, I'm one of the hosts, and together with Sean, who's one of my best friends and also my ex, we present this weekly podcast where we don't really tend to have a theme so much. We try and just talk about whatever's come up for us that week, but this week is a bit different because it's Halloween coming up and we're both lovers of the macabre, and Sean is a lover of vampires. We thought we would do a Halloween special, and I use the term very, very loosely. The conversation may ramble and go elsewhere. But anyway, how are you, Sean?
I'm good. Thanks to everyone for joining us again. And yes, I would definitely, if you're a betting person, I would put some money down now that we will stray from the topic as well.
That's our brand.
Our specialty. But if you are watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. You can give it a thumbs up. I think there's like a little bell icon where you can get notifications each time a video comes out. And then you can also rate us on Spotify. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, you can
subscribe on Spotify, and you can leave comments on each episode as well on Spotify, as you can, of course, on YouTube.
But I think with Spotify, if you're listening through a web-based browser on your laptop, you can't do it there. You have to do it through the app on your phone.
Oh, yeah. Do people do that? I suppose some people do use Spotify on their laptop.
Yeah, I do. I use Spotify on my laptop mostly.
Okay.
So, but I tried to... I think I tried to give Maybe I tried to give one of these episodes a rating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to give it 1 out of 5. No, I was seeing how it worked, and it said, please open Spotify on your phone to leave individual comments on episodes.
Oh, right. Okay.
So we're here to talk about Halloween, and I like anything spooky. I like anything spooky, but I have to say that when I was a child in Australia, and I'm quite old now, I'm 50, so I was born in 1974, I don't remember Halloween being a celebration or a landmark. How was it for you in the UK?
No, I mean, it wasn't either when I was very young. I would say the sort of American influence of Halloween did start to creep in towards the end of primary school. So I remember early years at primary school, Halloween was not, it wasn't something celebrated. It was more of not so much a religious thing, but obviously it has ties, as we know, to religion. But no, in terms of trick-or-treating and costume parties and stuff, it wasn't a big deal. I suppose because at least here in the UK we were much more focused on Guy Fawkes Night, which is the 5th of November. Which is so close to Halloween that that was the sort of the autumnal event, party, whatever you want to call it, that we focused on. But yeah, as I sort of got to the end of primary school, so that would have been late 80s, and went to secondary school, that's when the American influence, I suppose, of Halloween started to creep in.
But if you do even like a very basic surface level search about trick or treating, I mean, most historians will tell you, and I'm not one of them because I'm really not.
What, this isn't a well-researched factual podcast?
No, but there was something I pulled up on my phone before. See if it's still open. The tradition of trick-or-treating has its roots in medieval England.
Really?
And a festival of, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Samhain?
Samhain? Yeah.
Samhain, yeah.
And the term trick-or-treat first appeared in the 1920s. So is that...
So it was an English or British thing?
Well, it says the term trick-or-treat first appeared in the early 1920s in Canadian newspapers.
Ah.
And the earliest recorded use of the phrase in the United States was in 1928. So I think it's believed that migrants or immigrants, I don't know what the term is, who went from maybe Ireland and Scotland to the US, to North America, brought over the ritual or the practice of Halloween, and then it somehow combined with this idea of trick or treating, and
But so
became the
trick or treating was a notion, an idea, or something that happened in England, and then but the actual term trick or treat was first used in Canada. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
yeah. So I don't think people in medieval England called it trick or treat, but there was
Right.
a similar
But
concept.
what's so there was a sort of a thinly veiled threat that if you don't pay us off,
Yeah,
we
we
will do
probably, and it was
some sort of
probably, yeah, but it was
witch.
probably something like you lost your soul or something. You know what I mean? It probably
Right.
was a
Okay.
bit darker, or it wasn't. Oh, we'll throw toilet paper at your
Right.
castle.
Right.
We'll throw the piss bucket at your castle. It was probably
The slot
like, yeah,
bucket.
you're damned, sent to like limbo, or your soul is damned or something. But then
Okay.
it became um, really widespread in the United States. But the tradition died down a little bit in World War II due to sugar rationing. And then
Mm.
I'm sure, like most things, it was probably just commodified by a candy company,
Oh
probably bought
yeah.
it back and
Yeah.
saw a
Yeah.
way to really push it, like Hershey's or somebody.
Yeah. Go
Um,
capitalism.
so, I like when I was a kid, I don't remember, like, I can remember hearing about Halloween, but it wasn't a thing. Like, nobody, when I was a child, like around 1980 or in the early 80s, would have gone trick or treating. I mean, it just
No.
wasn't a thing. And if you had
No.
gone, if
Well.
you were like some outlier in Australia who thought, oh, I'm going to try it because I've seen it on an American TV show,
Hmm.
no one would have any sweets or
Right. No
candies
one.
or
No
anything.
one would be prepared with their Jolly Ranchers or whatever.
No,
No. Is that what they're
and
called in
that's,
Australia? Jolly Ranchers.
well, no, that's a brand of
No.
US candy.
That's an American. What are they called in Australia? You know, the sort of the juicy fruit.
Um,
Starburst. Is that what they're called?
Starburst, but that's US as well. Starbursts
Oh,
are
I
from the
don't
US. And
know.
you can buy
Yeah.
Starburst in the UK as well.
Yeah, but I think they used to be called something else. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
There's different brands that are similar as well.
but now I'm
But
starting to doubt my memory, surprisingly, because maybe people did trick or treat when I was a kid. I'm not actually 100% sure. I was trying to, as you were talking then, I was thinking back and I thought, well, if it was already happening in, by a different name perhaps in England in centuries gone by, then why would it have died out and then come back like that? I wonder if maybe it was a thing.
and
But
if it was a thing, you would have been in the perfect neighborhood to have that. I mean, you lived in West London. It was kind of, parts of it were working class to middle class
hmm,
neighborhood at the time,
hmm.
mostly middle class. I mean, it would have been happening there if it was happening anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
don't know.
need to
I'll have to.
research. You need to do some research
This
about,
isn't
or
the
maybe
podcast for that.
no, but maybe somebody listening who grew up here in the UK has a
Hmm.
different memory, and maybe someone in Australia as well will set me straight. But I'm certain it didn't happen because I used to watch TV programs like Happy Days. Do you remember
Hmm.
Happy Days?
Yeah.
And they used to have like a Halloween party or a Halloween episode, or
Hmm.
and so the concept, I understood the concept, but nobody had a Halloween party in Australia.
No.
I mean, the
No.
major celebrations were Christmas. For some bizarre reason, Easter was really big in Australia. And at school, they used to make, force us to make Easter bonnets, which were like hats. And
That
then
is
we would
so
have
funny.
an Easter bonnet parade at school.
They
And you
don't
had to
still do
walk,
that, surely.
some schools would. And this wasn't a religious school that I went to, it was a
But
government run primary school.
well, Easter, I suppose, would happen in. Well, yeah, would in Australia, Easter would be in sort of early autumn.
Yeah, it's like
Would that be
no, it
right?
was a spring thing, isn't it? No,
Here
autumn
in the
in
northern
Australia.
hemisphere,
Yeah,
it's in the spring. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And we would make bonnets. So you'd get paper or cardboard and make a hat, and then you would have to decorate it. And the person with the most the best decoration would maybe win something. But you would put little, you'd get like Easter eggs, like little chocolate foil wrapped
Mm,
eggs, like
mm.
solid ones or little candy eggs. And we put them on and you would decorate it. I mean, I don't know. The whole Easter celebration thing is all twisted anyway, because doesn't the rabbit bring you eggs?
I don't know.
Easter bunny.
All I can think of is Miriam Margolyes, who does the voice of the Cadbury's bunny.
But
Um,
yeah, it's the Easter bunny brings you eggs for some reason.
well, it's all just spring symbolism,
Yeah.
symbology. Is that a word? Symbology? No, have I made that up?
Vibology.
Symbolism.
Vibology.
Vibology, the Paula Abdul album.
Yeah, give me that vibology. No, but my family used to also leave a nest for the Easter bunny to leave our eggs in. So, at Christmas time, you might leave a stocking out.
Mm.
In Australia, I don't know if every family did this. I think they did. But before you went to sleep on Easter Eve or Easter night or whatever it was, you could build a nest, but we didn't have material. So we would get a towel and we would roll it and then wrap it around so it created a little nest or a circle enclosure. And every kid would have their own little nest made out of a rolled up beach towel. And then
Very
you'd wake up in the
peculiar.
morning and the Easter bunny would have come and left
It's
um,
very odd.
chocolate eggs or candy eggs for you. But
But
that was as big for us as Halloween is for people
mm,
now. Like for me growing up, that was our Halloween,
mm.
the Easter bunny. But I don't remember. I don't really recall when the switch happened. Like when I moved to the UK in 1998, I think some people did trick or treating.
Oh yeah, it would have been happening by then. I think by the sort of late '80s, early '90s, I'm sure it was a regular thing that happened every year because I remember in secondary school, so from maybe the age of about 12 onwards, I do remember going trick or treating, and I remember making sure we had sweets to give away on the 31st as well. So
The 31st of October.
October, but again, I suppose being so close to Guy Fawkes Night, it always sort of seemed a bit kind of like an add-on. Guy Fawkes Night was a big thing, and for those of our listeners who are not in the UK and have never been to the UK, you may not know what Guy Fawkes Night is, and it's basically it's a it's the sort of annual tradition that was born out of a real life plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament by a man called Guy Fawkes and his band of men. But even though I think it was originally started, you build a bonfire and then you have an effigy,
Mhm.
like a sort of dummy of Guy Fawkes, and you set it on fire. So it's quite twisted, isn't it? Like you're burning the effigy of a person, and it's done in a way to, I suppose, punish him, to teach him a lesson for trying to blow up Parliament. Um, but in some ways, he became a sort of a celebrated figure as well, like this act of sort of anarchy and extremism. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird because Halloween is so close to the 5th of November. It always sort of paled in comparison.
So the fireworks night or Guy Fawkes Night, that's a really
Mm.
big thing, right? Like
Yeah.
and it still is in the UK. I mean, I've never been. I don't think I've ever been to a bonfire night or a fireworks night.
No.
No, but
Yeah.
like a lot of local councils will have events around London where you can
Yeah.
go
So
and
that like the
see
big
fireworks.
parks will have firework displays and a big bonfire, and yeah. It
And
is weird because you don't see it so much anymore, but when I was younger you'd see on the streets of London, you would see young kids would make their own homemade effigy of Guy Fawkes, and they would wheel him out onto the street or whatever, or to a crowded spot, and they would ask for money. They would say penny for the guy, and just try and solicit money from
what's that
strangers.
mean? Penny for the guy?
Penny for the
Like,
guy. So they've made an effigy of Guy Fawkes, and so
yeah.
they're just asking for money to sort of reward them for their efforts So the better looking the effigy, the more, the more you might feel obliged to give them a few pence or whatever. But
The
you don't really
only
see that anymore.
no, no. I I don't even think most young people would even know what any of this was. I mean, you
Maybe
must
not.
learn about it in school.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The only effigy I've seen in real life, I think, was when John Howard lost the Australian federal election,
Oh
and
yeah.
we saw the people with an effigy of John Howard and set it on fire in the street.
So that John Howard being the Prime Minister of Australia he
Yeah,
was
he was.
Prime Minister for a long time, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was a very right wing conservative
So
politician.
fun fact. So in 2000 and I should know this, shouldn't I? I think 2002. Sean and I were living in Australia in Brisbane, and that was under the John Howard government. And the what do they call it? The ALP? Is that what it's called? Australian Liberal Party?
I
Is that
don't
what
know
it?
if it's the ALP. No, I think it's just Liberal Party.
The
Like,
Liberal Party?
isn't
Okay.
ALP the Australian Labor Party?
Oh, maybe. So the
I'm not
Liberal Party,
sure.
which is not liberal, it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not liberal; it's right wing. And John Howard was the prime minister, and at that time there was no recognition of same-sex relationships in Australia. There had been a sort of a movement for gay marriage, but there wasn't even a like a civil partnership option or anything like that under gay law, under Australian law. And so because I'm a British citizen, and because in the UK there was the option to have a civil partnership for same-sex couples, Sean and I got sort of quote unquote married. We didn't get married. We had a civil partnership at the British consulate in Brisbane, Australia.
But you just
And
said in 2002.
wasn't it 2002?
No, nowhere near 2002.
Oh, what
It
was
was
it? What
while
year
I
was
was
it?
a university student. So it
Oh,
was
okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. See,
2007, 8,
my memory
2008
can't.
or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, I think it was.
You're about six
Oh,
years out.
no, I don't know. Well, you should
Because
know not to rely on me.
we moved back to Australia from the
Yeah,
UK
that's
in
true. In
2002.
2002, yeah. Okay, well, whatever year it was, 2007, 6, 8, whatever. Um, Sean and I had this civil partnership, and we planned it as a political. Not, we didn't do it for sort of romantic reasons or anything like that. We just did it purely as a political demonstration to highlight the fact that under Australian law, there was no legal avenue for us to formalize our relationship or to have legal protection, in the event of one of us, dying or being in hospital on life support or anything like that
Chance would be a fine thing.
under Australian law. There was no recognition of our relationship at all. We were just flatmates under Australian law. So we did this elaborate sort of political stunt thing, and we actually John Howard, the Prime Minister at the time, was actually asked about us on a radio show.
Mhm.
He was asked, I think the interviewer said something like, "Oh, did you hear about the same-sex couple in Brisbane who had a civil partnership? Will that ever be, will gay marriage ever be legalized in Australia?" And he said, "No, no, marriage is between a man and a woman," and blah blah blah. Just the usual shit. Um,
But it did eventually change.
it did, yeah. And we
And you
we like
can,
to take full credit for that.
yeah, yeah. And for the downfall of John Howard as well.
Yes, but yeah, and I remember that night. Going back to the bonfire story, I remember that night when somebody was burning the effigy of John Howard, and one of the people who lived on that street, they sort of yelled out the window, "Put out the fire" or something, didn't they? Was that same night? Put out the
Yeah,
fire.
yeah.
And was it David? I think it was like,
No, I think it was Lauren.
oh, it was Lauren. Lauren was like, "The fire's just begun, man."
Yeah, that was. But people were very excited for the first time in a while about politics, and maybe one of the last times
Hmm.
about because this people thought that this government was never going to be voted out,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. They weren't just voted out; it was like a really big seismic swing against them.
Hmm.
But it's not funny, like you talking about how you thought, oh, well, 2002 is the same as 2007 or whatever year we did it.
Yeah.
And now we're both even questioning what level of trick or treating was there when we were kids. Like maybe we've misremembered. Isn't memory such a weird thing? Like
Yeah, I know.
somebody could show me photographic proof of me at a Halloween party as a 7-year-old and I wouldn't remember that it happened. But if
Yeah.
somebody gave me proof, I suppose it happened. But
Yeah.
why are our memories like this, where some things feel like they happened yesterday and then some things we just completely wipe from our minds?
And I wonder how much is there in our subconscious as well. Like, if we were sort of to undergo hypnosis or something, would those memories be there, or have they've gone forever now? A sobering
And
thought.
yeah, also what we remember is flawed as well. Like
Oh
even if we
yeah.
think we
Yeah.
remember something perfectly,
Hmm.
we if we could go back and watch it like a film, it would be so different to what we remembered.
Yeah.
Like a few episodes ago, we were talking about uh, when we went to see Rocket from the Crypt for the Halloween party
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah.
at in
In
San
San
Diego.
Diego.
So Rocket from the Crypt is a rock and roll band, and they used to host a big Halloween party every year in San Diego, where they would play live and people would come dressed up. And in 2006, I think it was,
Are you
they
sure about that?
well, once again, I
That
don't
sounds
know.
about right. Sounds about right.
People dressed up, and we talked in the other episode about I dressed up as Steve Irwin, you dressed up as a Guantanamo Bay. Maybe this won't even
Don't
get to
don't
air this
cancel
episode.
me. Don't cancel me.
We might be
There was a
cancelled.
context. There was a context.
We
You
might
have
be
to go back
cancelled
and
by the time this comes out.
you have to go
But
back and watch the episode to know
yeah,
the
if you need the
context.
context. But in that, I recounted a story about how I was in the elevator with some members of Rocket from the Crypt. And they asked, could they take my inflatable crocodile to the
Hmm.
pool? If I watched a replay of that in real time, it probably was so different to what my brain remembers it being like.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
probably not
Memory is,
anything like what I remembered it to be like.
yeah. Well, memories
But
are just in the sort of the narrative that we tell ourselves, I suppose, aren't they? They're,
and it's often the narrative that we want to remember,
yeah,
or we remember things to help placate ourselves, or to deal with trauma, or to minimize bad memories.
yeah.
We shape the memories the way that is to our benefit.
Hmm.
That where we dressed up at that party, is that the only time you've been to a Halloween party where you've dressed up? Where else have you ever done that?
Oh no, I mean, I think I've been to loads. I think I went to like my mum's neighbour Marion across the road. I went to her Halloween party. Must have been, it was during the last 4 years. It was obviously since maybe about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, maybe. But yeah, I went as I don't know, like as a surgeon in like scrubs, covered in blood. Um, I mean, it wasn't much of a costume, but I'm
But
sure. Did we never
what
go
is
to Halloween parties? Did we never ever?
I just have to stop you for a second. Your choice of Halloween costumes is a little bit unusual. Like a surgeon covered in blood. Like what has happened there?
I don't know.
What was
I
the
don't know.
story? What's the
I just don't. I don't. It's
Are you
probably
a
like
were you a mad doctor who was
it's
doing
probably
experiments? Were you
last minute panic costume.
were you somebody who like lost their last patient? You were traumatized. Like what was the story? Because
I don't
normally
know.
you
I
have a
haven't. I didn't
storyline.
have a whole backstory to it, but I did win best costume at the party.
You
I mean, it
did.
wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't a high bar, but
What were
anyway.
other people wearing?
Oh, just like a witch's hat or something. Um, but didn't we
Surgeon.
go? Didn't I'm just trying to think. No, I think before I met you, I went to a Halloween party in Australia, in sort of semi drag, perhaps. Um, I don't know.
Did you come to that Halloween party I hosted for Next Level Pizza at the pub?
No, I don't. I came to one of those pizza parties, but I don't think it was a Halloween one.
And I went to, there's a famous costume shop here near Old Street in
Mm.
Shoreditch. I forget the name of it, but every Halloween there's like a queue around the block. It's in the basement underneath like a commercial building, and it's this really big Halloween shop. They've got everything from like cheap vampire fangs to really elaborate costumes that you can hire, like take out on rental.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there to look for a vampire cloak
Do you know,
cape.
just as sorry to interrupt you, but just as you're saying that, if you don't move, like, apologies to those who are listening on Spotify and not watching it, but just the way you're sitting now, the back of your chair, it looks like you're wearing like a Dracula. You know how the collar comes up?
Or like Frankenfurter.
Yeah. You know how they have that, they pop the collar up and it's sort of like that, and it looks exactly like that. Sorry, anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
So I went to buy this cape because I thought, oh, well, I'll wear it. I'm hosting this Halloween party. And they were so expensive. And I found this cape that was kind of in my price range. But when I got it out at home, it was so flimsy and crap and tiny. And it was like the string barely went around my neck. And so I looked like a morbidly obese vampire with this tiny cape. Like tiny. It was like barely went past my bottom, and I was walking around this party thinking that, oh, this is so tragic.
But did you have any other costume? Like, did you have
I
makeup on,
also bought
or
some,
vampire teeth?
they had these fangs, and that they had this putty. So you were meant to put the putty, heat the putty up in hot water, and then put it inside the fang and then press them onto your teeth. But they kept falling out. So every now and then I'd look in the mirror and I had this like one fang, and then I nearly choked on one. So I had to take them out. So I had nothing. I had just this ill-fitting cape, and I just looked like a fat Dracula that in a bad cape.
Fatula.
Yeah. And other people, like, some people made an effort. Like, some people love that sort of thing, don't they? They'll like spend weeks and weeks playing their outfit.
Yeah.
And that's the only time I can think, outside of the Steve Irwin thing at the Rocket from the Crypt gig, I can't really remember another time where I've dressed up for Halloween. And I think if that's what makes me think that it didn't happen as a kid, is because I would remember. There were times where I did dress up as a child. I can remember we used to have a show and tell at school where you had to either present a project or you could do an interview. You could get someone to interview you, or you would interview someone else, and you could pretend to be a famous person. And I went and got my friend to interview me, and I dressed up as Boy George.
I love it. So
and I was
funny.
in primary school. I would have been very young, and I was obsessed with Boy George. Even like, spoiler alert, if you don't know, I used to live in a tent when I was a kid for a while. And I had Boy George poster inside this broken down cupboard that was inside the tent. It was very tragic. And I used to sing Culture Club songs and dream of being like a glamorous superstar. And so I went to school dressed as Boy George. Whatever I was able to scramble together, I can't imagine what it looked like.
It's not an easy look to pull off on a tight budget.
And if you're a poverty-stricken child living in a tent in Australia, what are you gonna? I think I got a scarf or some sort of pashmina sort of scarf that I tied around my head, like some sort of turban or headdress, and I maybe had clip-on earrings. I don't know. I probably looked more like an old 1920s Hollywood star or something, or like Rudolph Valentino or something. And I can remember I just somehow found information. This is pre-internet. So I had to buy magazines like TV Week or Smash Hits or whatever the music and pop culture magazines, and find interviews with Boy George where they said his real name or his age or his parents' names or his siblings. So my friend interviewed me and said, oh, what are your brothers' names? And I'd be saying,
so this was primary school?
Primary school. Okay. And just nonsense. Like, I look back at it, but I think I got a good grade for it, or whatever you got at the time. Like, people didn't boo me out of the room.
You played a convincing gay
convincing
icon.
Homosexual. But also at primary school, we used to have school dances sometimes. and we once were told we were allowed to do a fancy dress. So it wasn't Halloween, but it was just fancy dress. And I went dressed as one of the Blues Brothers, and so did half the other kids in my school. All just wore dark sunglasses and a black tie, and we
Just
all
so
thought we were the
easy.
Blues Brothers, like walking around dancing to Whitney Houston.
Do you know, I've never even seen the Blues Brothers.
Oh, okay. Well, you
So,
should.
I mean, I know the look. I know the look, but yeah.
Well,
Um,
isn't your one of your heroes in it? Isn't
don't
Carrie
know.
Fisher in it?
Is she?
Or am I completely making that up, misremembering?
I don't know. She
It's one
might
of those
be. If she
films.
is, then I should watch it.
When I was a kid, it's one of those films that my family used to watch all the time. Did you have movies like that were sort of staples in your house that you would watch over and over?
Yeah. Star Wars, maybe E.T., Jaws. But I mean, we didn't get a VCR until I was about 10 or 11. But occasionally, on like very rare occasions, my mum would bring the VCR home from work, maybe like Christmas time or something like that. And that was like the most exciting, incredible occasion ever. Yeah, I
We used to
remember it.
go. We used to go to the Blockbuster down the bottom of the hill. And before we got a VCR, you used to rent a VCR from Blockbuster
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
But then when we got a VCR, we just thought, oh, this is amazing. And we used to go down, and out of all the movies, we'd still just get the same movies all the time. We'd watch like Blues Brothers. Like I saw it hundreds and hundreds of times. And then
yeah.
even right into my teen years, like I can remember renting Heathers on VHS from the video store, Video Easy or whatever it was called in Australia,
Mm,
and watching it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And
mm,
like maybe even like if you rented it for like 2 days or overnight, you'd try and watch it twice in that time. And then you'd get it another couple of weeks later.
yeah.
I don't really do stuff like that anymore. Is that like a kid thing to do, to like repeat watch something over and
No, I don't
over?
think so. I watch things multiple times, films and TV series. I mean, not, back to back, but if it's been a few years, I might revisit something.
So in your in the theme of Halloween, what sort
Hmm.
of movies did you watch then as a kid that were obviously the movie Halloween?
Yeah,
Did
Halloween,
you see
but
that when you were a kid?
I I think I did. I'm trying to think. I think that the films that come to mind for me primarily are the Nightmare on Elm Street series, An American Werewolf in London. I mean, that was probably early to mid '80s, wasn't it? And that
Yeah,
was
probably around mid
terrifying.
eighties.
That was one that my brother and I watched growing up, and it was just terrifying. Like really, really scary. I haven't. That's one I haven't revisited actually. I wonder if I should watch that now. It might seem really crap. Um, but yeah, the Nightmare on Elm Street, the Freddy Krueger ones, they're just to me they represent. Oh no, the Omen as well. Like the Omen was, really
Oh,
a
Omen was
big,
terrifying.
yeah, yeah. But I'm fascinated in because a couple of weeks ago we were talking about, for lack of a better word, spirituality, um, and you are quite a staunch sort of non-believer in that, but you do love Halloween and all the sort of vampire lore and stuff like that. So, like, is that just pure, sort of like a pure indulgence for you? Like, do you? Because I know you've said in a couple of episodes that you have scared yourself by watching some TV shows or films about vampires. And so,
Well, this might take a bit of a dark turn, but I think a lot of people who are into scary movies and being scared, it often is for people who have been traumatized in their life, and it's a release. It's maybe a
okay,
sense of control to feel scared, but it not be real.
yeah,
So instead of being
to
scared of things,
externalize.
yeah, instead of things that have really hurt you,
Mhm.
you want to experience that danger and that thrill of being scared, but then you know that it's just make believe. I mean, with vampires, like there's not, and a part of me that believes vampires are real, but I love going on about it.
Hmm.
I am obsessed with it. When I've planned a vacation, a short, like 5-day vacation to Paris at the end of the year,
Hmm.
and I've arranged to have a tour of Père Lachaise Cemetery with somebody who used to run the Vampire Museum
Oh,
in
wow.
in Paris. So he's going to take me around and show me where all the vampiric lore and hidden things are in the cemetery that apparently
And
relates to vampires.
do you think, I mean, I know you haven't met him yet, but do you think he believes the vampires exist?
No, I read an interview with him where I think he said it was translated, so I don't know how well it was translated, that he understands that it's just a story. Like
Okay.
it's not real to him,
Hmm.
but it was a way of people coping with unknown, just like religion, like often vampire tales or stories about monsters or ghosts or chupacabras or whatever it is were ways of people to explain the unknown or once again to deal with trauma and and fear.
Hmm.
But when I was a kid, my parents would let us watch pretty much any horror movies. So I was a child watching slasher flicks like Friday the 13th and The
Hmm.
Burning, but very violent, often highly sexualized,
Hmm.
uh, like horror films. And but I don't like those sorts of films anymore. Not modern ones, anyway. Like I don't like Saw or those sorts of films
Like
that
the
are sort of,
really gruesome, gory.
yeah, or they just, I don't know. There's something. This sounds really weird, but there's something more old timey or wholesome about Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
There's maybe some motivation, but some of these modern horror, like slasher flicks, are just pointless, senseless violence, and just
Yeah.
they don't go anywhere. There's no lore
There's no
to them, or there's
psychological
no,
horror. There's
yeah.
just gore and
But
violence.
the movie Halloween is, I know I always talk about my top 5 movies, and I've probably
Mm.
said that 30 times, but Halloween is definitely in there. I suppose I should really name them then to make sure I'm not saying more than five. But Halloween, Heather's, Hedwig
Wait.
and the Angry Inch.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about Halloween movies. I was like, wait a
No,
minute.
I'm
Heather's
just trying
isn't
to
a
work
Halloween
out if
movie.
like I've named too many, then that fits in five.
Okay.
But I don't know what the other two are. But I love Halloween. That's a film that I have watched a lot. Do you remember when we went to see it at the cinema in Philadelphia?
In Philly?
Yeah, didn't we go and see Halloween on Halloween in Philadelphia? And didn't we go with your brother?
Maybe.
And there was somebody dressed up as Jamie Lee Curtis, like a guy in a dress with coat hangers. Because you know that famous scene where she's hiding in the closet from Michael Myers
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
grabs the coat hanger and bends it and hits him with it. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert. But somebody was dressed, like had a wig on, the similar sort of outfit, and had some wire hangers and was in the
Once again,
crowd.
my memory fails me.
And it was in Philly, like in the US, a lot of people just shout out in the cinema and
Oh, it's a
they
very
don't
different experience. Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
sit down and be quiet. And like
No.
people were like hollering at the screen and shouting. And this guy, when his part came on with the hangers, people were cheering
Yeah.
and it was packed. It was a packed cinema. You don't remember that?
No.
And
No.
I'm sure we went with Ben. If you ask Ben if he remembers, but maybe his
Okay.
memories is as fried as ours. But
Well, the only film I remember going to see in Philadelphia with Ben was the Dixie Chicks, or the band formerly known as the Dixie Chicks. What was their documentary? Was it Shut Up and Sing?
shut up and sing.
Was that what it was called? I remember going to see
Yeah.
that with Ben at the cinema in Philly. Um, but yeah,
But
again, it's weird what your
didn't we
memory.
also didn't we also see that in New York on our own, and then we went and saw it again with Ben? I have a feeling
Maybe,
we saw
yeah,
it
maybe,
twice at the cinema.
yeah.
But
But
yeah,
just on Halloween films or scary
yeah,
films, the other one I forgot to mention earlier, you were saying what did we watch as kids? The other one was the Amityville Horror. So
Oh yeah.
even though I didn't have a VCR, my friend across the road, Lindsay, her mum managed, I think, the local video store. And well, she definitely worked there. I think she was the manager. Anyway, so Lindsay had a VCR at home and they had hundreds of VHS movies. And of course, we could go to the video store and get whatever we wanted.
Hmm.
And so she had an amazing selection of films. And yeah, I remember watching the Amityville Horror with her and Poltergeist. That was a really good one as well. Um,
Yeah.
but the
We
Amityville
used to
Horror
go.
was,
Oh yeah, this is very scary. The Omen was very
oh yeah,
scary for me as a kid.
yeah,
But also, we talked about it a few episodes back where I talked about how scary Salem's Lot was
oh
for
yeah,
me.
yeah,
That really kickstarted my vampire obsession. But we used to go to the drive-in a lot when I was a kid,
yeah.
and you didn't really have them much in the UK, did
I've
you?
never been to a drive-in. Yeah, it's one
So
of
we
my
used to
one of my
go.
biggest life regrets.
We used to go and see like adult only movies, like scary slasher flicks. And so my
Mm.
parents, in a display of what good parents they were, would sneak me in to watch these horror movie marathons. And I was under 10 years old.
What, like
Like
in the
I'd go,
boot, in the trunk?
yeah, so either in the back with a blanket over me or in the boot or in the bit where the spare tire goes. And I would sneak in and I saw like slasher flicks like The Burning or Friday
Mm.
the 13th or I Spit on Your Grave. Like I Spit on Your Grave is a rape revenge slasher flick. And I
I
saw
don't
that
think I've ever seen it.
when they remade it recently or a few years back. But I saw those movies as a child, and I think now, like if I had a kid, there's no way I would let them watch something like that. And I can remember I used to go and be. Sometimes I was a friend of um, my parents who would sometimes babysit me if they went out, and I would stay with them, and they would watch slasher flicks, and I would sit there and watch like these exploitation zombie films.
Mm.
I loved it. I mean, it was terrifying and often highly inappropriate for a child. I mean, a lot of these slasher flicks go hand in hand with sexual exploitation as
Oh
well,
yeah,
especially of
yeah,
women. And
and
so
yeah,
I
like
was watching
sexual
stuff.
deviance as well. Like
Yeah,
underage women, you know, entering like consensual intercourse often means they'll get killed because
yeah, they deserve
they
to be killed.
yeah, yeah.
That's the theory, the law of slasher flicks. But then I suppose slasher flicks kind of came back later in our lives or when we were in our 20s and 30s with things like Scream.
Hmm. Yeah. And I know what you did last summer, and
Yeah. I was with you, right, when we were watching. No, also with somebody else. When did Scream come out? What year would that have been?
uh,
It's before I met you, then.
you're asking me. I didn't remember what year we got married.
So when I saw Scream in Sydney the first time, it was maybe the first weekend screening, and we were sat there, and I mean, everyone, like, it's okay for me to give spoilers, right, for a movie that's 30 years old or whatever.
I think
But
so. Yeah.
at the beginning of the film, there's this famous scene where Drew Barrymore is on the telephone and the killer is saying, the call is coming from inside, or I'm in the house, or whatever it is, she's on the phone.
Hmm.
And just as she's about to be killed or attacked, in the cinema, the film froze. And the middle of the film, it started to burn a hole and burn out, but it was projected
Hmm.
onto the screen. And
Hmm.
then we were in darkness, and we thought it was part of the film.
Oh
So
right.
there was a full cinema of everyone just sat there in the dark. And I think
Mm.
it lasted about a minute. And then people started to get nervous. And then people were whispering, oh, the killer's in the projection booth. And it was very scary but fun. And then somebody had to
That
run out.
that should have been part of the film.
Yeah, somebody had to run out and tell them. And then it was in the olden days when they had actually, it wasn't digital film, it was a reel.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they had to get their other stock canister of it and replay it. And they played it from the start again.
Ah.
But that was scary. But what do you think of the movie Halloween?
Um, can you remind me of the plot? Because it's been so
Oh,
many
come on now.
years.
It's such a
I
classic.
mean,
How many times do you think you've seen it?
I don't know. So Jamie Lee Curtis has a brother, Jason. It's her brother, right? Who was what? I mean, do they ever fully explain? Was he just labeled as sort of mentally disturbed, or
I
what?
don't think it's her brother.
Is it not her brother?
Isn't it? Isn't
Isn't it her brother? I'm sure it's her
I,
brother,
I
Jason.
don't think it's her
No,
brother.
not Jason. It's not Jason, is it?
No, it's Michael.
Michael Myers. Yeah, I'm sure it's her brother. Well, we should have researched
No,
this.
I think it's the because he kills his sister, Nancy. That like he like the beginning of the film is like Nancy is in her bedroom with a
So,
boyfriend and they're getting frisky and somebody comes in and kills her and the parents stabs her and the parents come home and they pull up and the little boy is standing outside the house in his Halloween outfit with a knife in his hand with all blood on it. And that's
mhm.
Michael Myers and he's killed his sister. I think that's it.
So
And
what does Jamie Lee Curtis's character have to do with him then?
um well
I I
she's a
I
babysitter.
thought they were siblings.
I think that that's maybe a misconception of
Oh,
because his name is Michael Myers and in the
yeah,
film he when he comes back, so then it fast forwards like I don't know, 18 years or whatever, 8 years or 9 years, whatever, and so he's an adult and he escapes the mental asylum that he's in. He steals the police car and then he comes back and he breaks into the old house where he'd killed his sister and he has somehow taken her gravestone and put it on the bed and it says Nancy Myers. That's the same last name as his. So that's the person he killed was his sister. So
hmm,
he's just come back and then he spots Jamie Lee Curtis and somehow has some sort of I don't know fixation on killing, but he also kills everybody else. He kills other
hmm,
young women in the area, but she
yeah.
somehow survives. And I think it's a really good film. Like it's one of I think one of the best horror films. It was a real genre setting film. Not a lot happens in it. Like it's not very gruesome. There's a little bit of gruesome, but it's more that sort of tension and psychological
Yeah,
drama.
yeah.
And the music is incredible. Of course, John Carpenter. The music is iconic. Like you hear the music and you know it's Halloween. I mean,
Do you,
can you picture it? Can you imagine the music?
yeah, but do you know the film that I didn't watch as a child or a young person? I think I only watched it as an adult. Was The Exorcist?
Hmm.
That for some reason, well, it was actually banned. Like you couldn't get hold of it easily. I don't think
In the UK.
in the UK pre-internet.
Uh-huh.
And then I did eventually watch it. I think as an adult, maybe with you. I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, that was. I mean, you can see, by modern standards, it's not that shocking, is it? But when did it come out in the
Yeah,
70s? In the 70s, it was very
yeah,
much a taboo to to paint the Catholic Church in such a way, and to
yeah. Like people felt like it was mocking Christianity,
mm,
but I mean, Halloween came out in 1978, so I was only 4 when it came out, so I wouldn't have seen it probably until I
mm.
was 9. Do you remember when we went to that cinema and pizza shop in Manhattan and watched The Triple Exorcist,
Oh
that
God,
hardcore porn version of The Exorcist?
I do. I don't think we got through the whole thing because we were just like the novelty wore off after about 5 minutes, and then it was
Yeah, it
just
had like a
that,
dildo in the shape of like a crucifix,
and then
and
it was just like bad porn,
yeah, it was just a porn movie.
straight porn as well.
Yeah, it was
So
just a porn movie, and we went as kind of like a thought it would be some like subversive art
yeah,
house cinema experience, underground film experience, and it was kind of funny at first. Like people were all laughing, like people weren't
yeah.
there as a sexy thing. But then, yeah, it was just sitting in a room with strangers watching a straight porn movie.
Do you know, that just reminded me? I don't know if it was the same trip. I think it might have been that time we spent 2 months living in New York, and we went to see Evil Dead the musical. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
And it was
that
so
was cool.
good. I don't know why. I wish somebody would bring that back. It had amazing music. I don't
Yeah,
know. I wonder if the soundtrack has ever surfaced on the internet, but it had incredible music. I think we went to see it twice, or maybe even three times.
yeah,
And
definitely. And you could sit in the splatter zone, and they would give
yes,
you see-through plastic ponchos, rain
hmm,
ponchos, because the fake blood would spurt out of.
yeah. But
And
isn't it
there
funny
was,
that like I can still remember like at least one of the songs, do the Necronomicon, do the Necron. And given that I only ever saw it twice, maybe three times over, well, more than 15 years ago, nearly 20 years ago. And that the soundtrack was never, well, not that I remember anyway, it was never available online. Isn't that amazing that I can still remember that level of detail?
and we saw it at, I think the venue is the New World Stages.
Was that what it was called?
Yeah, and one day we were walking around the East Village and we saw the actor who played the demon in the cellar, this woman,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
walking around, and
yeah.
like we
She was
said,
with
"Oh
her
hi,"
mum. Her mum was visiting, and
yeah, we said
yeah,
hi. Didn't we say hi? We saw you in the thing. You were great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She was really pleased. Um,
Have you seen any other scary Halloweeny type spooky stage productions?
well, last year was it maybe actually early this year? Um, our friend Anna came down from London, and we went to see the Stranger Things theatre production here in London, which I think is still going. I walked past it a couple of weeks ago, um, and that was fantastic. I mean, it didn't tie in with Halloween, but it was certainly quite scary. And the special effects were really, really fantastic. Really scary, shocking, like jump in your seat kind of experience. So that was good. And then the other thing that I went to see at least three or four times as a young adult, like a maybe between the ages of 11 and 16, is a play called The Woman in Black. And that
Hmm.
was on the West End. I don't think it's still on. Maybe it is, but it was on the West End for a long, long, long time. It was one of the longest running,
Yeah, a
and
few
that
years
was,
ago, Daniel Radcliffe was in it.
oh, really, here in London. Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
okay,
yeah, yeah, here in London.
okay.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, that was scary, really, really scary.
And what about? I used to see, even before I really was surrounded by Halloween. A lot of TV shows I watched as a kid had Halloween in them, like Scooby Doo, or all these cartoon shows I used to watch, like would have Halloween themed episodes, or even Happy Days. Like, remember, one of the scariest things I remember as a kid was a Halloween or a spooky version of Happy Days, with that where they go to a house with a headless person in it, and it really scared me a lot. But did you didn't really have stuff like that in the UK, did you? Like shows that did a spooky special episode, or
Um, I don't think so. No, I think it was much more an American or Canadian show thing. But going back to New York, I also remember, that same trip when we were there for Halloween, just how Americans go all out for Halloween. I mean, you would walk around New York on Halloween night, and you would just see so many people in the most incredible costumes. Like it really was, it's such a vibe. And then this time last year, I was in LA, I was in California, and I don't know if I ever showed you any of the photos, but the way people decorate their front yards
Mhm.
is just beyond. Like, I mean, it's quite disgusting, really, but people must spend, tens of thousands of dollars. Not everyone, but some of the
Yeah.
sort of richer neighborhoods. I went with Sal and her sister. We went to what's that, Runyon Canyon, and
Hmm.
just that's a really, really, really expensive neighborhood. And where we parked, there was a house, and they must have spent at least $50,000, I would say, on the most incredible Halloween decorations. Just so unbelievably complex and realistic, and yeah.
When did we first go to Mexico? What year do you think?
2006 or 7.
I can see that since that the first time we went there, I can see how Halloween has become more prevalent
In
in
Mexico.
Mexico
Oh
because
yeah.
obviously people commemorate Day of the Dead, which is just after
Mm.
Halloween, like the next day.
Mm.
And I can remember when we first went there, it was more about Day of the Dead. But as the years went on, more and more and more shops were filled with like Halloween stuff, and there
Oh
were
really?
Halloween parties and Halloween decorations on houses. It just seems to be a massive deal in Mexico. It's about,
Well,
well,
that, but
only in
so
Mexico City.
many,
Like I
so
say.
much American, like USA culture does, filtrate or infiltrate Mexican culture. But that's interesting because I mean, I love Day of the Dead. I love the imagery and everything, and I love that time of year in Mexico. But just back on the American thing, do you remember we went to? I think it was in LA, and I think it was at Universal. No, I think it was at Knott's Berry Farm. In America, the big theme parks for Halloween, they have these. They go all out because they love to celebrate Halloween, but they have these like scary haunted mansions where you just walk through.
I've got this written down as one of the things to talk about. It was going to be the last thing, that haunted house we went to,
It was
but it was at
possible.
Universal.
Was it you? Oh, that, yeah. Okay. Well, I thought it
Hmm.
was Universal. It was probably one of the most scared I've ever been in
Oh
my
yeah,
life. And at
yeah.
first, it starts off, quite silly, doesn't it? You go into
Oh
these
yeah.
they're
There's
like
like
kind
an
of like
old
mazes or
Yeah, but you walk in and you think, oh, it's going to be really tame because there's like a glass box with like a wax Dracula figure in there, and it's not
mm,
moving or anything; it's just there. And you go, oh, there's Dracula, and then you walk around and there's, I don't know, an old timey picture that's like maybe the eyes move, and you go, oh, that's funny, and then you suddenly being terrorized by real people dressed
real
as
people.
characters from the Universal like movie like catalog. So, but even things that they own the rights to now, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like Leatherface was in there
With
with
a
a
chainsaw.
chainsaw.
That
You
was
had to
that was the
walk through all
breaking
these
point.
body bags. What?
Yeah, that was the breaking point for me. That's when I ran for the fire exit. When Leatherface was coming at us with the chainsaw, I was out. I couldn't. It was too
And you're
scary.
walking, and there's like split levels or little hidden holes. So there was like this wolfman werewolf thing and reached
Yeah,
through this grate at ankle height and tried to grab my ankle. And I was like, the wolf man is grabbing me. And it
it
was so
was
scary.
it was very scary because there's of course I don't know if there's any truth in it, but there's so many urban legends about real serial killers or real um, werewolves or whatever going and working in these things and actually killing people or going there as a guest and actually killing people. So I don't
Yeah,
think
that's
it's probably
urban
never
legend.
happened. Hmm?
Urban legends.
Urban legends, yeah, but still, as
Also,
when you're in there, as level-headed as you think you are, and as calm as you think you are going in, it's a very different story when it's like
oh yeah,
Leatherface
you
running at you
think
with a
that Leatherface
chainsaw.
is going to kill you.
It's terrifying.
What didn't we once drive to look at the outside of a house that we used in Halloween, and it was in somewhere like
Yeah,
Arcadia or somewhere?
yeah, yeah. I think it's around there, somewhere in LA. Yeah,
Isn't
I
that a
don't.
weird thing to do to go and look at the house? Like we went to see the house that's from 6 Feet Under or the
Yeah,
Charmed house.
yeah, and the
What a
Thriller House, the Michael Jackson Thriller House,
what a strange
which
thing
is
to
on the
do.
same street as the Charmed House. I
Why
just
would we do that?
I just remember talking about that Leatherface thing at Universal Studios. Do you remember a few months ago when we were in Ireland? What was that little town on the coast in Ireland where we did that ghost train? It was from Derry Girls, where they go to the amusement park, Curry World or something. Was that what it was called?
I can't
Curryland?
remember the name of it. Yeah, but we went on the ghost train. Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, it was predictably terrible. But it was at the end, like the staff, I suppose they had nothing better to do because they weren't exactly many people there that day. And just at the end, after you've seen all the really like shonky, you know, laughing heads in boxes and stuff like that, as you turn the final corner, the staff are there and they just like jump out and like scream at you. And it was so scary.
I absolutely love ghost trains. What I would really like is to, if I was ever rich enough, I would build a ghost train, but it was all just vampire themed.
Oh, yeah.
So there would be different Dracula rooms and vampires. And what about that? Maybe we'll have to close with this, but it's just triggering so many memories of things I didn't know. That museum in Mexico City, and it's serial killers and vampire
And yeah,
museum.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like a vampire museum with all different vampire lore and wax figures and everything from all around the world. But then
Hmm.
in the other wing of the museum, it's real life serial killers with all these like life size realistic recreations of serial killers. Like they've got John Wayne Gacy's living room rebuilt,
And you can
and
see
there's a
under the
trap door
floorboards.
opened, and he stood with half his body gown where all the bodies are, and the other half above in the living room, and
That
he's
was
dressed as a
twisted
clown. And then Jeffrey Dahmer's refrigerator with like testicles and
in
genitals on
jars and
plates in
stuff.
the refrigerator.
Yeah,
Such a weird museum.
that was very peculiar.
But I
But
do really love the vampire part of that museum. I forgot all about that. I wonder if it still
yeah,
exists.
it was just around the corner from Vajamo, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like downtown. Um,
Yeah, in downtown.
just I know we need to wrap up in a second, but just talking about that ghost train, and you said how you would love to, if you were rich, you would build a ghost train. Did you ever watch Supergirl? Because this Supergirl was actually one of the films that I used to watch as a kid all the time. We had it on VHS, and in Supergirl, it's who is it? It's Faye Dunaway, and who plays her sidekick? I can't think, but anyway, they live in an abandoned amusement park inside the ghost train, and so they sort of to get into their house, they would get on the ghost train cart, and I just that used to it used to thrill me. I used to love the idea of living inside a ghost train. It would be amazing.
Well, it's Halloween, so happy Halloween to everybody. If Josh, if
Yes.
you had the resources and you cared to, what would you dress up for if you were invited to a Halloween party and you had a big budget? There was no obstacle to what you could do. What would you go dressed as?
If I was going, no obstacles, no financial obstacles, or logistical obstacles, I think I would like to go as a werewolf because the
Hmm.
American Werewolf in London, as I said, was probably the earliest scary movie I watched. So I think I would embody the werewolf, and I would sing that Shakira song as well.
Oh yeah,
What about you?
that
What would
was
you?
the Spanish language
Yeah, I would
version.
try the Spanish. What would you go as?
Probably Dracula, but I would go as a vampire, but really old school, like really beautiful old suit with a black cape that has red lining on the inside, or maybe as cheeky Dracula. There was a famous in Mexico. There was a little kid in the 80s and 90s who played a mini version of Dracula, and it was a comedy skit program.
I think you've told me about it. I don't think I've ever seen it, but I think yeah, it sounds vaguely familiar. I think maybe you told me
And
about
he
it.
would say, tú es o tú eres, tú es mi víctima. And then
Uh-huh.
he would say, ñaca, ñaca, and laugh. And then, but he would never, he's a little kid and he was cheeky Dracula and he would dress as Dracula and then never actually kill anyone, but he would pretend to sneak up on people and then something would foil it. But it was all like really low budget skits, comedy skits. And he released some music as well. They released some cheeky Dracula records. I have a
Amazing.
record actually in my collection with one or two cheeky Dracula songs on it, and with all
Cheeky
these other
Dracula.
kids from Mexico TV stars singing on it. But I would maybe dress up as cheeky Dracula.
Cheeky Dracula. I love it. I love it.
Cheeky,
All right.
cheeky Dracula.
Well, we should wrap up. But wherever you
Yep.
are, I hope you have a happy Halloween or
If you
a,
celebrate.
Yeah, or a spiritual Samhain, or whatever version of it you'd like to celebrate. Please remember to subscribe. And if you want to find out any more about me and what's going on in my life, you can find me on Instagram at Josh and the Jumpstarts. What about you, Sean?
People can follow me on Instagram at FatGayVegan. And please do leave comments below about your memories of Halloween, especially if you'd like to correct anything we said, because I'm sure we made between 60 and 100 factual errors and
Yeah.
misremembrances in this podcast. So
Yeah, disclaimer, nothing we've said today actually holds any weight.
It's for entertainment purposes only, and even then you might be lucky to be entertained.
Yeah. Well, stay safe, stay away from Leatherface, and we'll be back in your feeds this time next week, providing, the demons and the vampires don't get us.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Happy Halloween. Bye.
Bye.